Marcus Tell had covered the Aldrin County Municipal Planning Commission for 3 years, and he had learned one thing about Gerald Pratt: the man ran his hearing room the way a foreman runs a yard, with the particular confidence of someone who has never once been told he was wrong inside these walls. Marcus sat in the press gallery on the left side of the room, notepad open, pen moving. The room was full. A rezoning proposal for the old Caldwell corridor had drawn residents, developers, a row of attorneys, and 2 television crews who had set up in the back and were already packing it in because the evening had been procedurally dull. Pratt sat at the center of the raised commission dais, flanked by 4 other commissioners who deferred to him the way lesser planets defer to a sun. He had a way of adjusting his microphone before he spoke that said, without words, that what followed would matter. He had done it 11 times tonight. Marcus had counted. The public comment period opened at 7:42. A line formed at the floor microphone. Residents spoke about traffic studies and setback variances and the height of a proposed parking structure. Pratt listened with the practiced patience of a man who had already decided. He cut one speaker off at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. He thanked another before she had finished her sentence. He was, in every visible sense, the ceiling of this room. The woman who stepped to the microphone at 8:17 did not look like she intended to be the ceiling of anything. She was somewhere in her mid-50s, composed, in a dark blazer, carrying a slim leather folio under one arm. She set the folio on the podium ledge, adjusted the microphone to her height, and began. My name is Constance Osei-Morrow. I'm here regarding the Commission's handling of the Environmental Impact Review on the Caldwell Corridor proposal, specifically the procedural record from the March session, which... Gerald Pratt's hand went up. Excuse me. He leaned into his own microphone. Are you a registered party of interest with this commission on this matter? She looked at him evenly. I am here in my official capacity. If you'll allow me to. The public comment period is for registered parties and residents of record. Pratt turned to the commission clerk without looking at her again. Is this speaker on the registered list? The clerk checked. Looked up. No, Chair Pratt. Pratt nodded once, the way a judge nods before a ruling. Then I'm going to have to ask you to step back from the microphone. Your name will be struck from the speaker's roster. If you believe you have standing to address this commission, you may file a registration form with the clerk's office by the deadline posted on the website. He said it pleasantly. That was the thing Marcus noticed, the pleasantness. There was no heat in it, no visible contempt. It was bureaucratic, clean, and final. The room accepted it because Pratt had delivered it as though it were simply the rule, the way weather is simply the weather. The woman did not step back. She opened the leather folio. Marcus put down his pen. She drew out 2 items, a laminated card, a photo ID with a seal at the top that Marcus could not read from the press gallery, and a folded letter on what appeared to be official stationery. She placed both items on the podium, aligned them with a deliberateness that filled the silence, and then looked up at Gerald Pratt. My name is Constance Osei-Morrow, she said again. I am the Regional Director of the State Office of Land Use and Municipal Compliance. My office issues, renews, and, where cause is found, suspends the operating licenses of municipal planning commissions in this region. That includes this one. The room did not react immediately. It took a moment, the way a very large thing takes a moment to fall. Pratt recovered faster than Marcus expected. The Commission appreciates your service, Director, but this is a public comment proceeding governed by our own procedural rules, and those rules require. I understand your procedural rules, Chair Pratt. She picked up the folded letter from the podium and opened it. This is your Commission's operating license. It was issued by my office 14 months ago. Section 4, Paragraph 2 of that license requires that any duly credentialed representative of the issuing oversight body be afforded immediate access to address the Commission on matters of procedural compliance. The March session environmental review record constitutes such a matter. She set the letter back down. Quietly. Without drama. I am not here as a member of the public. I am here as your licensing authority. The 2 television crews in the back had stopped packing. Pratt looked at the Commission's legal counsel, a man named Harwick who sat at a small desk to the right of the dais and who was, at that moment, reading something on his phone with an expression that had gone very still. Harwick looked up. Pratt looked at Harwick. Harwick gave a small, barely visible shake of his head that could have meant several things, none of them good for Gerald Pratt. Pratt turned back to the microphone. His voice had not changed in volume or pace, but something behind it had shifted. "I think we should take a brief recess while counsel reviews." "I'd prefer we not recess, Chair Pratt." She said it without sharpness. As a preference, stated simply. "The March record is a matter of public documentation, and I would like to address it while this hearing is in session and on the record. That is the appropriate procedure under the license terms." Marcus was writing again. Fast. She turned back to the public microphone, as though the matter of her standing had been fully resolved, which, Marcus understood, it had, and she began. She walked through the March session record in 11 minutes. Her language was exact, dry, and irrefutable: dates, docket numbers, the specific procedural provisions that had been bypassed, the environmental review criteria that had not been met. She cited 3 sections of the State Municipal Compliance Code by number. She did not raise her voice. She did not editorialize. She stated what was in the record and what the record required. When she finished, she reached into the folio one more time and produced a single printed form. She held it up briefly toward the commission dais. "This is a notice of formal compliance review. Under State Code Section 44-11, I am authorized to open a review on-site, in session, when I have reasonable grounds to believe that procedural deficiencies have materially affected a commission's proceedings." She set the form on the edge of the podium. "I have those grounds. I am opening the review now." She took out her phone, made a call that lasted 45 seconds, and ended it. Then she stood at the podium and waited. Gerald Pratt said nothing for the remaining time. He sat behind the dais with his hands folded in front of him and his microphone off. Harwick, the legal counsel, had moved his chair closer to the dais and was speaking in a low voice to the commissioner on Pratt's left. The other 3 commissioners were looking at various points in the room that did not include the dais or the woman at the microphone. The audience had gone very quiet. At 8:48, 31 minutes after Constance Osei-Morrow had first placed her credentials on the podium, a woman in a gray suit entered through the side door of the hearing room. She carried a briefcase and a manila folder. She walked to the clerk's desk, exchanged a few words with the clerk, and then approached the commission dais. She was a representative from the State Oversight Board's regional field office. Her name, she stated for the record when Pratt opened his microphone to acknowledge her, was Field Director Amara Lowe. She had a formal audit opening notice. She placed it on the dais in front of Gerald Pratt. "This notice formally initiates a compliance audit of this commission under the authority of the State Office of Land Use and Municipal Compliance," she said. "The audit scope covers the March through May procedural record. This hearing is suspended pending the audit's preliminary findings. The suspension is effective immediately." Pratt looked at the notice. He looked at Harwick. Harwick had stopped speaking. Additionally, Field Director Lowe said, "The Oversight Board has, upon review of the conduct documented during tonight's session, issued a formal censure of the Commission's presiding chair. That censure removes the chair from the presiding seat for the duration of the audit. A replacement presiding officer will be designated by the board." She paused. "Chair Pratt, I'll need your signature acknowledging receipt of this notice." He signed it. The room let out a breath it had been holding for 31 minutes. Constance Osei-Morrow collected her folio from the podium. She picked up the laminated credential and the license letter and the compliance review form, placed them back inside in the order they had come, and closed the folio. She stepped away from the microphone. She did not look at Gerald Pratt. She did not look at the room. She walked to the side door through which Field Director Lowe had entered, and she was gone before the room had fully registered that she was leaving. Marcus sat for a moment without writing. Then he wrote the line he would lead with. Harwick was already on his phone. 2 of the commissioners were speaking quietly to each other. The woman with the camera from one of the television crews was moving toward the dais. The clerk was gathering documents with the focused calm of someone who had decided to be useful. Gerald Pratt remained at the dais. His microphone was off. His name would appear in Marcus's story that night, and in the Oversight Board censure filing, and in the Commission's formal audit record, and eventually in the final compliance report that his successor would have to sign. The written apology was entered into the Commission's public record the following morning, submitted on Aldrin County letterhead by the county's chief administrative officer and addressed, formally and on the record, to Director Jose Morrow. It acknowledged that the Commission's presiding officer had failed to recognize a duly credentialed oversight representative and had acted contrary to the terms of the Commission's own operating license. It was 6 sentences long. It was, in Marcus's estimation, the most reluctant 6 sentences he had ever read. He filed his story at 11:14. His editor called him at 11:30 to say it was good and to ask whether he had gotten a comment from Pratt. He had. He had caught Pratt in the corridor outside the hearing room after the session closed, the signed receipt copy of the audit notice folded in his jacket pocket, the presiding chair designation stripped from the placard on the dais behind him. Marcus had asked him what he would have done differently. Pratt had said, "I followed procedure." Marcus had written that down. He thought about quoting it in the story. In the end he did not. It seemed unnecessary. What he quoted instead was what Constance Jose Morrow had said at the microphone, the second time she had said her name, not the part about the license, not the statute numbers, not the compliance review. Just the 4 words before she placed the letter on the podium. She had said, "I understand your rules." Marcus had been covering Gerald Pratt's room for 3 years, and he had heard a great many people try to hold their ground inside it. He had watched them pushed back and talked over and thanked before they were finished. He had written those nights down and moved on. He would not move on from this one. The credential had been real and the statute had been clear and the authority had been undeniable. But what Marcus kept returning to, long after the story was filed and the audit was underway and the censure was a matter of public record, was not the mechanism of the reversal. It was the woman at the microphone, composed, unhurried, certain, who had placed her credentials on the podium and waited for the room to catch up with what she already knew. She had not needed the room to believe her. The room had needed her to speak. That was the difference. And Gerald Pratt, for all his practiced authority, had never once understood it.